Hey, what's up? This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com. It is Sunday, June 4th, 2023. Brad Treliving is the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. We haven't spoken in a while, Michael Augello.
Yes.
And so much has happened with the Maple Leafs. New guys in. Kyle Dubas is the GM and the president in Pittsburgh. Look, there's really no point in trying to get caught up on a bunch of things that the combo has missed because life just comes at you fast. So as of today, what say you? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Norm. Well, start with Treliving. He's a well-respected, extremely respected manager in this league. In terms of the Leafs finding a good guy in terms of his ability to do the job. I think they did well. It fell into their lap that Treliving and decided to part ways with the Flames. I think after 9 years in Calgary, he just saw, maybe the writing was on the wall, or maybe he just needed a time. 9 years is a long time. So I think he's going to do a good job. I don't envy his position right now, which we've well chronicled about, Nylander with the limited no trade kicking in on July 1st, the no move for Marner and for Matthews. Apparently, he's going to travel to Arizona or wherever Matthews is to speak to him because it seemed from his press conference, and I was at the press conference on Thursday, that's priority one, along with the Sheldon Keefe situation, which we'll talk about in a minute. But that's priority one, to get on the same page with Matthews. He's got a good relationship with Orr Wasserman and Judd Moldaver, his agent. So they, ideally, they want to get a commitment from Matthews before July 1st, or at least
they need something.
Yeah, at least to be on the same page to say, okay, we're working toward a deal and we're going to get the deal done before the start of training camp, because they don't want to go into the season with Matthews in a no move clause. And then I'll say, well, let's see. We'll see where we go. No, they
need, that would be, Mike.
Yes, they need a commitment. It was a distraction.
They trusted Dubas, and look how it worked out. They trust Austin Matthews too.
Yeah, it was a distraction for John Tavares with the Islanders, and we know how that turned out. So yeah, they need a commitment from Matthews before the season, but preferably before July 1st. But there's a lot of decisions to make. And I know that last night, Elliot Friedman mentioned that Treliving and Sheldon Keefe had spoken a couple times. They're in a weird situation where Keefe is in the last year of his deal. Now, I don't think they want to rock the boat anymore in terms of the player. There's enough change with Dubas leaving. There may be a change in terms of one of the core four being moved. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to change the coach, especially when the coach, I guess, is liked. And Treliving went out of his way to say, well, Keefe had 115 and 111 points in the regular season the last 2 years. And that's true, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the playoffs. We're talking about winning a Stanley Cup, and one round since November of 2019, when he took over from Mike Babcock, is just not good. Now, I think that the fan base wants like wholesale change. They want coach, they want general manager. I think, they weren't going to get what they wanted when it came to Dubas until, really Dubas in a way shot himself in the foot with the comments. Even he said in his press conference again in Pittsburgh, coincidentally the same day as the Treliving press conference, that maybe he was a bit too honest. Because that's, I think.
Can I just throw something into the mix here? Do you think when Kyle Dubas referenced his kids and the pressure and whether or not he felt it best to continue on as general manager of the Maple Leafs, do you think in that moment when he said that, he figured that in 2 weeks he'd be being introduced as the general manager and president of the Pittsburgh Penguins? Do you think he thought that in that moment?
I think in that moment he still wanted to be GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I do think, though,
that's huge, man.
I still think, though, he wanted to do the job the way he thought he needed to do the job, which was with more autonomy and more control. And he's got that. He's got that in Pittsburgh. He's got a 7-year deal. He's president of hockey operations. He's the center point of that organization now. Now, I don't think he was looking for that. I just think he was looking for a seat at the table. I think he was looking for, some even power distribution, or more even power distribution with Brendan Shanahan. And I think that the comments, and this has been all chronicled by other reporters, so I'm just sort of rehashing, but I think the comments on Monday, and like I said, Norm, I was sitting 10 feet away from him. I could see the emotion. It wasn't a ploy. It wasn't an act. That, the last year without an extension put a lot of pressure on Kyle Dubas. I believe that was legitimate and
Right.
real. But I do think what he was trying to do was sort of, okay, well, all my people are in this organization. The whole scouting staff is mine. The whole management staff is mine, but I missed out on things that I wanted to do because of bureaucratic BS. And I need to cut through that bureaucratic BS to be able to do my job effectively. And then on Thursday, before he was let go, apparently his agent came out and, offered a new offer with those parameters, with more salary, and the tenuous nature of his power base on the board was through Shanahan. And then when Shanahan started to back away, I think everything crumbled, and that's why he's no longer the GM in Toronto.
This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. These are very busy times in the car business. Not a lot of inventory on the ground. Vehicles are selling, whether it's used or slightly pre-owned or brand new, finance, lease. I can help you. I have OGs and converts reaching out to me all the time at Norm at Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram. I will do what's best for you. Give me a shot and you will find out. You will be very, very, very pleased with the things that I can accomplish for you if you are looking for a new or used vehicle. Wow, Mike, there's just so much to unpack in terms of the departure of Kyle Dubas and some of his motives, whether he deserved to get all of the autonomy, or maybe Brendan Shanahan was not there to be overlord or be a fatherly figure at times where he felt Kyle Dubas was extending himself. But everybody needs some checks and balances. And internally, it sounds to me like this power struggle couldn't continue on, and it certainly did not. Let's just get back to Brad Treliving, though. And again, his priority number one, and sure, want to re-sign one of the best players in the world, a generational talent. There's nobody like him.
Right.
Potentially retaining a head coach who is respected, who the players know, and get that done. So there is some normalcy there. There is some commonality between what Kyle Dubas created and did very well with, and what Brad Treliving is inheriting and wants to potentially modify. That said, usually when you bring somebody else in, they make some changes, and the fan base wants wholesale changes. They're brokenhearted still. Everybody's really, really emotional, and you know how polarizing the whole Kyle Dubas era was anyway. So those who did not like Kyle Dubas are, with pitchforks and torches and ready to witness all of this. Brad Treliving's got to do something to put a stamp on this team and make a change, does he not? Or maybe he lets this thing play out a little bit, kind of keep it similar as it to what has we've seen for a while, and maybe potentially lay in wait, see how things progress, and then do something down the line. The question is, does he make a stamp on the team that is appreciable and very noticeable in the early going, or does he wait a while?
Well, he said in his media availability, he didn't believe in, as he said, throwing a body on the tarmac and basically saying, okay, then there's your change. He believes in good players and constructing a team. So I don't think he's going to trade Mitch Marner just to say, hey, I'm Brad Treliving and here's where I stand. No, I don't think he's going to do that, but I do think that he recognizes, as somebody from an outside perspective, that there is certain shortcomings with this team that need to be addressed. And maybe that was part of the interviewing process. Maybe he had that opinion from afar, but I don't think anybody who's a neutral observer that can say that this team doesn't lack a certain something when it comes to the postseason. You see Vegas and Florida. And what the type of game that they're playing in the Stanley Cup final, and see what the type of game that the Leafs are playing, and it's Mars and Venus. It's a completely different world. So that they have. So, I mean, I do think now the funny thing is there will be changes. There will be changes that he initiates, and there will be changes that will be thrust upon him, and that's where I think there's a situation like I think they want to keep Brandon Pridham as the assistant general manager, the capologist, somebody who has enabled Kyle Dubas and even back to Lou Lamoriello doing the calisthenics that they do on the cap.
There's no emotion with Pridham, is there? It's just mathematics.
Right, but there's a loyalty there to Dubas, and that's what I mean. This is the issue here. I mean, Brad Treliving cannot take part in the draft because he was still under contract with Calgary. So Wes Clark, the head of scouting, will be doing the drafting. Now they have a 1st and 5th and a 6th round pick, but that means also, I mean, that means that Treliving.
Can Brad Treliving not have anything to do with the draft? Can he not be on a phone in a hotel room?
He can't be on the floor. I mean,
he might be going to have some say.
He might be able to. Well, no, in terms of who is picked, no. But in terms of trading,
how does the league mitigate that? How does the league prevent?
Because he's under contract to Calgary until June the 30th. That's why
he can't.
He can't be on the draft floor. He cannot be on the.
He can't be on a phone in a Dunkin' Donuts across the street.
He can be on a phone. He can talk to the people on the draft floor, but he can't say take Quentin Musty. He can't say take this guy or that guy. He can't do it.
I'm getting at he's okay. So the fact he can't be on the draft floor, I mean, maybe he had stomach bug, can't be on the draft floor, but he's still sending people texts. So he's gonna have something. He's gonna have a say.
He could trade draft picks, but he can't tell them who to draft.
Okay.
So, but this and apparently the situation is not the same with Pittsburgh. And Dubas, at least not that has been publicly released. But the situation is that Treliving has limited time, and when it comes to like the staff, and some people think, well, this is not that big of a deal. Okay, Dubas set up a scouting staff and a management staff over 5 years that you have to say was doing a much better job at drafting and developing than Mark Hunter and Dave Nonis and Brian Burke before him. That's all gone now because eventually, unless these people are paid more or they're under contract for a couple years, Pridham could go to Pittsburgh. Wes Clark could go to Pittsburgh. Brian Hardy could go to Pittsburgh. I mean, you could say, oh, who cares? Well, that's the guts of this organization. And honestly, that's what was brought to the organization under Brandon Shanahan by Kyle Dubas, and now that's all pitched into the.
But this whole scenario makes me uncomfortable. This like divine allegiance to Kyle Dubas, management, heads of organizations, the guys in charge change a lot, and the underlings and those who were hired by dudes who were packing up in a lot of circumstances don't just go with them because it's Kyle Dubas, like he's the fucking messiah.
No,
but again, Kyle Dubas did a great job. We hear a lot of stories about how one executive comes in, makes some changes, and when they're gone, they do what they have done has contributed to what the successor was able to compound and make better. And we talk about the Leafs winning a Stanley Cup in a couple of years. Kyle Dubas deserved a lot of the credit. He's in Pittsburgh trying to remodel the Penguins. That's just the way she goes. But this idea that now Kyle Dubas is gone, there's going to be a mass exodus because it's Kyle Dubas's way and it's only working for Kyle Dubas. That's the only aspiration these people have in life. It makes me uncomfortable because, again, Kyle Dubas is not bigger than the game. He's not bigger than the organization. There was a power struggle. Shanahan got his panties in a bunch, as they say, because he didn't like how Kyle Dubas responded to a very serious question. Here we are. The shit just continues on, Mike. But Kyle Dubas built something, and now it's all going to crumble because he's no longer here. That's bullshit, man. Things are way too convoluted. Way too intertwined, and there's just so much going on within an organization. It's not that easy to have the entire staff who looked up to Kyle Dubas, was hired by him, just to walk away. Brad Treliving will probably do a pretty serious job of being peacekeeper and lobbyist, and doing that bureaucratic work to keep a lot of these people on board, because it's just not that easy to pack up from Toronto and follow the Messiah to Pittsburgh.
Well, I can only tell you this. The reason that Kyle Dubas was named president of hockey operations is more than likely to get somebody who was an assistant GM in Toronto to be able to give them a salary and a title bump that gets them out of their contract with Toronto. I think that if people don't think there are going to be massive changes in the Leaf organization in pretty short order because Kyle Dubas went to Pittsburgh, I mean, that's going to happen. I think it's a question of how much of a mass exodus. I mean, yeah, you're right. They're not going to all, like on June the 30th, if their contracts are up, walk out and get their first Air Canada flight to Pittsburgh. Yeah, it could Spezza, but Spezza's not ready to be a GM. He only was an assistant to the GM for 1 year.
Like, okay, we love Jason Spezza and the way he finished his career with the Leafs. Great player. Look, what a solid guy, and then became Dubas's right hand, a companion at games. So what?
Well,
like,
I mean,
Jason Spezza left. Like, this allegiance to people, man.
No, I know, but
people so much. Who cares?
Norm, but the thing is, I mean, I'm not interested in how it affects. I'm interested in the effect that it has on the Leafs organization, and that's where if you see like 2 or 3 assistant GMs, and you see that basically the scouting department, these scouts, they're people who are, they're not interested in cutting off their nose to spite their face. There are people who have, right, and that's.
I'm just putting these up, Mike, and you can continue.
Right, no, but that's a good point that Chris Daniels put up there, is the fact that these were Dubas acolytes. These were people who were brought into the Leaf organization from Sault Ste. Marie, from the Chicago Steel, the USHL.
They were going to be employed with the Leafs and working for Dubas forever. This is the big leagues, man. These things happen.
Well, I mean, they didn't expect it to end last month, and it did. And they were apparently that the reaction was everybody was caught completely shocked.
Whose fault is this?
Well, I mean, okay,
really.
Kyle Dubas played a card. And this is what I've been saying for a while. I mean, I think what he said in his end of season availability was legitimate, but I also think what he did was he saw, that the organization was all of his people, was his scouting staff, was his management staff, that he had it as a well-oiled machine running. And was MLS&E going to throw that all out? And up until Thursday, they weren't. And then when it was a sticking point that he wanted more autonomy and more money. And it's not, I think that it's being done as a disservice to say Dubas left over money. That is horse shit. It is not. It was because of being able to do his job. And I think the situation with Shanahan where some of his power was being usurped. Now, under Brad Treliving is the GM, and he's part of a corporate structure, and he's everything's got to flow through Brendan Shanahan. So,
the general manager have full autonomy to do whatever the hell he wants in any circumstance, Mike. I mean, we all have to answer to someone. Then again, I don't have to.
There you go. Different management structures. Different management structures all over the league. Right. You've got individual owners. I mean, okay, I don't think there's any other ownership group in the league that has 2 media megalos like Rogers and Bell and Larry Tannenbaum. It's a very complicated management structure. And I can just imagine that if I determined I wanted to do something and I had to pass it through the bureaucracy of Brendan Shanahan and the MLSNE board and get the thumbs up, and then it comes back down the pipe, and by the time they get me the okay, the deal with somebody else has already been done. That's frustrating. So I think that's what he was dealing with, and I think he was trying to cut through that. And now, Paul is right, and this is part of the change as well, is that and Treliving did
Big
not.
Tree, that's Brad Treliving.
Yes.
Is he a big dude?
Not really, but that's, Tree. I think that's just,
okay. I've been like, what the fuck is he talking about? Okay,
yeah, no,
all right,
that's his nickname. His nickname is Tree.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
But that's part of it, and of course, Treliving didn't say he wanted to bring in one of his assistants. Ironically, most of his management staff in Calgary stayed under Craig Conroy, but you don't know whether on June the 30th, Don Maloney or his scout or whoever decides to leave for Toronto. So, I mean, there's going to be
migration. There will be people who stay and feel like where they are, it just makes more sense to continue on the road. We all get new bosses. We can't just work for the same person for the entirety of our careers. And Kyle Dubas this is the first NHL general manager's gig for him, and if he's bringing in people from the Sioux, you can imagine it's their first go round in the NHL. So it stings a little bit more than for people who have been seasoned in this league for decades and who've had jobs in multiple places. So it's the way she be, Mike. We're going to talk more about Kyle Dubas as the summer progresses, because there's again we'll always have to unpack more. I don't think we'll ever close the lid on this, considering the way things transpired. And in hindsight now, it's kind of a shame that it all played out like this. Then again, down the line, it may work out to that Kyle Dubas can enact the style of hockey he truly always wanted to play, and maybe was fighting to continue to, propagate and lay roots for. Now with Pittsburgh and Brad Treliving, what he learned in Calgary, he can apply the good and the potentially not the bad to what's happening with the Maple Leafs. It may work out for the best for everyone. Bruce Arthur has a column in the Star. It's from yesterday. Maple Leafs have to hope there's a first prize for second choices in the GM sweepstakes. It kind of feels that way to people like myself, and I'm sure you would concur relatively to that. But I do know there are a lot of Leaf fans who just disliked Kyle Dubas and everything he stood for. So there's a lot of optimism in the change from their perspective. Then again, as polarizing as this fan base is, it's not going to change anytime soon, Mike. It really isn't.
The hatred for Brad Treliving will start up just like what's happened with Kyle Dubas if they lose in the first round again next year. That's the thing. It's like fans are a results oriented group. They want results, and if they don't, they have to find somebody to take their ire out on, and that's understandable, but it's not logical sometimes.
Are you surprised how quickly Brendan Shanahan found a replacement for Kyle Dubas?
No, they had to. They had to immediately because of. I mean, we're talking
Bruce Arthur's column. I'm not saying Bruce Arthur is a know-it-all and is right on the money here, but he is onto something that this may feel like a second choice, or maybe not the most thoroughly thought out hire due to the fact the Leafs had to bring somebody in.
Well, I think he's saying is the second choice to Dubas. I mean, the easiest course of action was to re-sign Dubas to a deal, but they didn't want to re-sign Dubas based on what he was looking for. So, okay, now you've got to find the best other option, and that was Treliving. I just, believe that, I mean,
5 years, $3 million a year for Justin Holl.
Oh, please. But I mean, the whole situation, I mean, it would have been much easier had they just Had they, in a way, had they just succumbed like Dubas did to Nylander a few years ago, or had he succumbed to like Dubas did to Marner and Matthews? They didn't, and they decided to walk away. Okay,
So
so
it's in Brendan Shanahan's. At, I know I'd make this.
yeah,
Point,
but the problem is it's not. I mean, the decision is, but then now Brendan will walk away, and he'll be the overseer, and he'll be the parachute guy, and he'll his fingerprints. It's like, I mean, none of the he was part of the decision making group, but really it was the and he even said it, the day-to-day running of the operation is the general manager. Okay, well then give the guy the autonomy to do it.
right.
So, and they didn't do that. So okay, so all he wants to be consulted. He wants his power base retained. And he said in his media availability that I've never felt threatened in terms of the power. Baloney. I don't believe that. But well, who cares? I mean, he doesn't care. He just his situation was he wants this team to win, and he wants the credit for it. And okay, fine. Like, so now it's 9 years of this team being extremely successful, winning the lottery, getting to the playoffs every year, making tons of money, but not the success in the playoffs. And that's where that's the last straw here, is the success in the playoffs. So
we can, but we've criticized the Dubas teams for not being tough enough, not being tough, in front of their own net, in front of the opposition's net, to not have that bravado of what we're going to see in the Ottawa Senators here soon, and what the Florida Panthers have been able to demonstrate throughout the last couple of months. We've criticized Kyle Dubas for maybe going towards speed and skill a little bit too much, and that criticism is justified in so many ways. However, if we're just handing the keys completely over to this guy with no checks and balances, wouldn't he just say, fuck everybody, I'm going to continue to play this, I'm going to continue to build a team this way? You're not, I'm going to ship a guy like Matthew Nyes out and bring some skill back on.
Again, we don't know. We don't know that, and that's the whole problem. That's the thing. That's the thing that we'll never know, because we don't know what deals Kyle Dubas wanted to make that got turned down by the board. We don't know.
Like, Mike, that's the thing. We've lauded Kyle Dubas to the upteenth degree. And his criticism is warranted too. You can't just, I'm running the team at a certain age, I'm Teflon, I deflect any kind of criticism. It's my way or the highway, too fucking bad. Again, they're concerned that this team was trending in a way that just really didn't support a true winner when it counted, because of the lack of physicality. And Core 4 and their lack of physicality were on display, especially in that second round. That's a Kyle Dubas thing. This idea that, well, he just wanted to do more. Like what? Was he fighting against bringing in tougher players? Was he being fought on the idea of moving out players who we perceive to be tough down the line, to bring back players who didn't fit that mold? And he was being thwarted in doing so. Isn't that what we wanted? We didn't want Kyle Dubas just to go and bring a bunch of figurines in to dance around like ballerinas.
Again,
we wanted the team to get tougher. And if he didn't like that philosophy,
well,
what's wrong with having a conversation about it?
But we're painting a narrative here that might not be true. That's what I'm saying. It's like, we don't know. And then over the last couple of years, they did bring in players that were tougher players. Now,
is that against his?
We don't know. We'll never know. It's like, you can't say, that was something that was in the management room at 40 Bay. We don't know whether it was against Dubas's will, or whether there was a genuine change of his. Yeah, I mean, Bill, I get it. This is probably
we haven't talked. I get it. Bill, we haven't hooked up for a couple of weeks, so we're letting it all out.
Right, I believe that being a young GM, it was a learning process. He was learning on the job, and early on, he could be, religious to his beliefs in terms of, I believe in skill and speed, and that's what's going to win. And I do think that there was a morphing and a change in his philosophy. I I don't know whether he was pro or anti Ryan O'Reilly or pro and anti Nick Noel Achari or Luke Shen. We'll never know. So there's no point arguing it. All I know is that the one thing that he was religious to, and even in his last press conference, it seemed that he was changing what he wanted to do, was the core four, because he said nothing was off the table. And that's, that was music to my ears, because I'm sorry, I don't think that this team with this current construction of the core four making $40 million will ever win a Stanley Cup. They need to be augmented.
But that was look, was it a no-brainer? In theory, we've been talking about changes to the core four for a couple of years now, Mike. So if he was going to,
I think this was the last shot for the core four under Dubas.
I agree. So it should have been under the Kyle Dubas era if it had continued, and it should be as Brad Treliving starts to.
We hope.
40 Bay. Mike V. Maybe Dubas needs to show some more gratitude to Shanahan. Was a nobody until Shanny and the Leafs showed faith in him. Spoiled bleeping Brad. Wouldn't go that far, Mike. And you cannot tell me that Kyle Dubas, outside of the professional realm, outside of the kerfuffle that took place and the the bitch fest and this passive aggressive bullshit that a lot of people like to take part in, doesn't or won't be thankful that he got an opportunity from somebody, maybe not just Shanny in particular, but anybody who has the opportunity to make decisions at 40 Bay and then write checks and stuff like that. So he certainly is grateful for the opportunity. It just got to a point where there was a power struggle, politics got involved, and now Kyle Dubas is the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins and Brad Treliving is the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The task is a great one for Mr. Treliving. And what the hell is going to happen with Austin Matthews? And Mike, if you thought the Dubas scenario, was a soap opera, or has continued to be a soap opera over the last couple of weeks, what the hell is going to happen with Matthews if they can't get some kind of assurance from him that they're golden with him and not going to potentially lose him if they don't trade him? And that's talk about franchise changing.
Right? Well, I mean, that's why Treliving recognized that, and that's why he's going to probably fly out to Arizona and talk to Matthews face to face. I mean, Matthews has made it pretty clear. Let's just say I would be stunned if this time next year we were talking about Austin Matthews leaving for someplace else. But he does have all the leverage. He does have, he can basically get any length contract he wants.
Is he a Dubas loyalist? How deeply does he care about aligning his values and his trajectory in the NHL with Kyle Dubas? Last word to you, Mike. I gotta go. I got a baseball game.
No, he's not a Dubas loyalist. I think he wants to be in Toronto, but he wants to be in Toronto for the reasons, he wants to be the highest paid player in the league. He wants to probably get another big contract. He just doesn't want to be in a scenario where they're rebuilding. And if they're trying to win, he wants to be here. So I think he'll be here.
Hey, the Sunday Spectacular is back. It just fell on this show just fell on a day when we were finally able to collaborate. It's been a busy go round. And I'm quite frankly, looking back, was totally floored that Kyle Dubas and the Leafs parted ways. Yeah. So I was kind of planning for a quiet short hiatus, and then so much went on, and I'm like, shit, I can't sit down in front of my phone and talk to Mike here for a little while. But at last, we were able to finally put our heads together, do a show, provide the OGs and converts some content. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Close to 100 people in the chat, and we'll have thousands over the next few hours. Like what you see, subscribe to the channel. Remember, our pledge hasn't changed just because Kyle Dubas is in Pittsburgh. Lots of content to come. It might, we may miss a few hallmarks or milestones or checkpoints throughout the summer because it is busy, but rest assured we'll be here for the duration of it. OakRidgeFord.com, a great place to find your newest or most pre-owned vehicle. I can certainly help you at Norm at Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram, and Mike, one of the best in the business at hockeybuzz.com, and he does a lot of other podcasts as well off the post. And I thought I saw you with the Talking Leafs ladies. Leafs, what are they called?
Ladies Talking Leafs.
Awesome.
I'm their insider. They do like I go on their show like once every couple months just to give them the benefit of my
Probably not a silhouette when you're laying it all down, but then we can
yeah,
hear
with a big question mark in the middle of my head.
an Italian Western New York accent. I wonder who that guy is.
I don't hear the accent, so I don't know.
OG's converts. It's just obvious. The Italian American Western New Yorker. Yeah, we know and love him as Mike Augello. Okay, it's kind of looking like another Sunday Spectacular in 7 days' time, but Mike and I will stay in touch and we'll see what shakes down, man. As the Leafs turn, the biggest show in the league. We may not always love it, but we're here for it. For Mike, I'm Norm. Talk to you soon.